Welcome back to the Political Spectrum podcast recorded at Heartland Community College. My name is Brad Bray.
And I'm Charlotte Knobloch.
And with us today is Hunter Spencer, who is our sound technician. We have a special guest for our first interview of the year, Andria Merkle. Andria served as president of the Political Science Club last year and was one of the first interviewers for the podcast as well. Andria, welcome.
Yes, thank you so much for having me. It's really good to be back on the podcast, but this time as an interviewee.
Yes, we are so glad that you are here, Andria. What is a student trustee?
Yeah, so the student trustee represents all of the students here on campus, and I advocate for students' concerns and issues in the board meetings. Along with that, I represent the students at certain events, and I kind of meet everyone. I go to Lobby Day for the state of Illinois and lobby for mental health issues and easy access to an education for students. So, yeah.
And when did you realize you wanted to serve as student trustee at Heartland?
Yeah, so I always knew that I wanted to be a leader here at Heartland. I wasn't very active in high school. So when I got here, I was like, this is what I want to do. I want to help students, and I want to finally come out of my shell and be a leader. And I always knew that I wanted to be on student government as well. I didn't really know what student government was, but as soon as I got here, I joined the Political Science Club, and I became the co-president of that. And it really became my passion, being a leader and helping students and advocating for students, and letting them know that they have a voice in our political system as well. So when I heard about the process for student trustee and kind of what you're able to do with that, I knew that it was for me. And to be completely honest with you, the old student engagement director kind of nudged me toward it, and as well, or Sarah Tipton did as well. So yeah, I had a lot of support to do it, and it was also just my passion.
That's awesome. And I like how you said that maybe you weren't as involved in high school, but Heartland, there are just so many opportunities to get plugged in, which has just been great.
Yeah.
So if you had probably a kind of conception, when you had maybe misconceptions or ideas of how you thought that it would go, and is there something that you thought, I wish I would have done that differently, or I just wish I would have done something else as a student trustee?
Yeah, so I'll kind of start with why is being a student trustee different than other positions that I've had. So the first one is it is way more professional than most student leader positions. In political science, we put on all of these events, and it was more of a student position. Student trustee is very professional. I meet a ton of politicians. I work on board meetings. I feel like I go into a different zone, kind of. So yeah. What else did you ask about that?
If there's anything that you would have done differently. I know that you've done other things in our campus, so if there's anything that you've learned that you feel like has translated well with that, just anything you'd like to add.
Yeah, so I feel like being on Political Science Club definitely transitioned well. I feel like last year's club officers really transformed the club, and I was able to make a lot of connections as well. So the biggest thing that's helping me with student trustee is that I was close with President Keith Cornell before. He was actually my mentor. So I feel like I had a really easy transition into this position. And just everything that I learned in Political Science Club and being a leader last year, communication skills and honestly how to send good emails, those all transferred really well. So, yeah.
Okay, Andria, and from all your exposure to different aspects of campus here, if you could change one thing about Heartland, what would that be and why?
Yeah, so I definitely think that we have an amazing campus here. there are a couple things that I would probably change as far as benefiting the students. Our administration and our cabinet does an amazing job at keeping the students in mind. Along with our board of trustees, a lot of board of trustees don't really know what's going on the campus, but I feel like our board really does. But I would like to have a culinary program. I know that is like what? But yeah, so I recently toured Lincoln Land, and they have a culinary program, and it is gorgeous. They have a full restaurant that is run by the students, and they put on dinners like every couple months that are like these elegant, what's the word? It's like different kind of cuisines. So like when I was there, when I was touring it, they were setting up for a Belgium theme dinner, and It was so cool. And I got to tour their kitchen and everything when they were working, and I just think that would be amazing. We do have some great programs here, like our electric vehicles manufacturing center, which is the only one in the state right now. So that is so cool. But culinary and an airplane manufacturing program would be super cool as well. But I definitely love the programs that we have here. They're also very cool. So yeah, other than that, the kind of big things that I'm focusing on, and the Student Advisory Committee for the state of Illinois, that I'm the chair of the Advocacy Day Committee for, is focusing on is mental health and textbook affordability and more accessible, or making education more accessible to people of all areas, especially with disabilities. One thing that Heartland has done great is that we partnered with MCCA to get a building on the west side for people where it's really hard for them to make the trip over here, because it takes actually like over an hour on the bus to get to Heartland from the west side. And this is like all career and technical programs. So it has like an HVAC, I believe it's an HVAC program in there too. And I think it's within 6 weeks. I might be wrong on that number, but within 6 weeks you can get that certificate. So that's really great. And it helps with making college more accessible and helping them get a degree. But mental health awareness and textbook affordability, I feel like those are still in the works, not only for Heartland, but a lot of colleges at this point. They're all just, it's always been a thing, but it's definitely in demand now for task force for textbook affordability and some more awareness on college campuses about mental health.
Yes, thank you. Those are all such good things. And I know there were some interesting programs. There was more issues that are affecting the students, such as textbooks and transportation. I was very intrigued by the idea of a culinary program, especially that means that we would get a restaurant here besides Subway and Starbucks, and that would be awesome to have a student-run restaurant. That sounds like such a cool idea. Thank you for sharing all of that. So in the future, could you see yourself going into politics? You've got a background with being a leader, a student trustee, political science club. Would you go into that?
Yeah, so funny thing, for the past 2 years, I was I was a political science major, and then for the past 2 years, I had this dream of becoming a United States Senator, and I was so passionate about it, and I was like, this is what I'm going to do. There's nothing else I'm going to do. But I've always had this thing for becoming a gynecologist or an OBGYN. So I have finally switched my major to biochem, and even though I want to go into healthcare now, I do still see a future in politics, and I hope to serve on a community college board in the future as well.
That's so cool that and to let yourself change majors. I think a lot of students feel locked in once they've chosen and they've told people, this is what I want to do. They feel like they can't change. But you obviously have multiple giftings and you're able to use all of them hopefully someday. And that's wonderful.
Well, thank you. Yeah, it was horrifying to switch. I've always been like, I don't think I can do chemistry. But if you're out there and you're thinking about switching, just switch. It's worth it.
Well, it sounds like you made a good decision there. So how big of a role do school trustees play in local government?
Yeah, so student trustees and just trustees in general play a giant role in it. I spoke a little bit about Lobby Day earlier. So, like I said, I'm the Advocacy Day chair for the Student Advisory Committee for the state of Illinois. And that's essentially putting together a lobby day for student trustees and different student leaders on college campuses. If you don't know what a lobby day is, it's essentially where you can go and advocate for the issues that you're most passionate about. So mental health on college campuses is an example of that. And you can be face-to-face with your representative. And I did that in May or April, one of those two, last year. And that is probably it was one of my favorite things that I've done as student trustee because I got to directly advocate to our government and our representatives for the issues that are specific to Heartland, and not only Heartland, but just community colleges and students as a whole. So I would say it does play a giant part in it because as far as experts go, I am an expert on students. A lot of our representatives haven't been in college for a while. So they want to hear from the students and they want to hear what the students need.
Yeah, it's good to hear that there are people who want to hear from students and they want your perspective. Mm-hmm. So on that note, do you think that more students or young adults need to get into local politics, should get into local politics, and how would they go about doing that?
Absolutely. This was my biggest thing with political science last year is getting youth to vote. You have the right to vote, so why not take advantage of it? You get to pick who you vote for, and you get to have an impact on who your representative is. So that's the first thing. Please go out and vote. It doesn't matter if it's a presidential election or your local election. Both are very important, especially your local election. So please, please go vote. Along with that, I feel like the biggest issue with politics right now is listening to one another. I learned this in political science last year. This is how you kind of get involved in politics because you really learn what other people are thinking and you learn a different perspective just by listening. And then take opportunities such as volunteering. I've done a lot of volunteering and a lot of internships in the past year. I've probably done over 400 hours of it. I just love free labor. But it's given me a perspective on not just politics, but everything. Like, I've been able to make so many connections and see what people's needs are. Like, for example, I worked in the law library at our McLean County Courthouse where I worked with people who were self-representing in the civil legal area. A lot of these people don't have the money to pay for a lawyer, and they don't have the resources to navigate the system by themselves. So I was really able to understand, like, what these people are going through and what they need. So that was a great experience, and it made me more empathetic, which helps in being involved in politics as well because there's a lot of lack of empathy in the world right now.
There really is. It's really unfortunate, but there is a lack of understanding. I think it's so good that you touched on that. And just to make a little plug, the Political Science Club is always open to members, so please join, learn about other people's worldviews. You can meet Andrea.
Definitely join. It's fun, and there's cookies.
Thank you so much for coming, Andrea. We really enjoyed getting to know you and what it's like to be a student trustee.
Yes, thank you so much. And just for any students or faculty out there listening, you can always come to me if you ever have any concerns or issues. It can be something giant, or it can be something as small as something charging for water. when they shouldn't. So yeah, I'm open to hear any of your problems, and yeah, I hope everyone has a great semester.
Do you guys have more?
Thank you for listening to the Political Science. Thank you for listening to the Political Spectrum podcast. The podcast is hosted by the leadership of the club. Thank you for listening and have a good day.